I started writing Tales from the Triverse in September 2021. And this is a weekly serial. So I'd like maybe 3 or 4 weeks where I haven't posted. Like, I think sometimes around sort of Christmas week, or if I was ill, that kind of thing. But not that many weeks have been skipped. So a weekly serial, and the last chapter went up today. So that's like 4 years and 4 months or so of serializing this thing every damn week. Apparently, according to Scrivener, which likes to do stats as well, the whole thing comes out at about 245 chapters, which equates to 245 weeks. I think I'm not going to check the maths on that, but that's what Scrivener told me. The word count is frankly obscene. So the word count for the entirety of Tales from the Triverse is 408,912 words, for which I can only apologize. And I'm amazed that anybody read the whole thing. That's a stupidly large thing to read on the internet by some random guy that has never actually got a book published in a bookshop. Apparently the average word count of a chapter was 1,675 words, which is interesting because whenever people ask me, like, what's a good length to write a chapter that you're sending out online via a newsletter, I always advise people to do 1,200 words. Clearly, I've not been paying attention to my own advice. So I've been running slightly longer on average. Some chapters went way over. Don't think that many went under. But yeah, maybe 1,600 is my new recommended chapter length. One thing Scrivener does is it gives you like an estimate of, if you turn this thing into a paperback, how many pages it would be. Apparently, Tales from the Triverse, if it was a like standard paperback, would be 1,169 pages long, which is longer than I expected it to be. When I started this in September 2021, I did not anticipate it being that big. For a bit of context, I was looking on my shelves and I was like, oh, what have I got a book around here that happens to be about 1,169 pages long, just so I can like imagine if I printed Triverse as a paperback, what it would look like. And apparently, Lord of the Rings, this massive chunky thing, this is like all 3 Lord of the Rings books, that is basically the exact same size as Triverse. Not saying Triverse is as good, just to be clear, but from a physical object, that is the size we're talking about. So yeah, that's a pretty big book. That's why I'm actually quite tired. Anyway, that's the stats. Moving on, I just got like a random list of people that I just wanted to like acknowledge that have helped out in some way over the years. So this is not in any particular order. Up top, we have Mike Miller. You can find Mike, he's on Substack. He's read my stuff from the start. So like when I started doing serials in 2015, I think he was right there. And he's read all 4 of my books as I've published them. He comments every week. I like to think that I'd be writing this stuff even if like nobody was reading it. But I think really like I need one reader. As long as I've got one reader, I'll come back every week and keep writing this stuff. And Mike has always been there. So yeah, Mike Miller has always supported my writing and massively appreciate that. Next up, we've got Matt Plummer. Matt I've known for many years. He's a visual effects artist, but particularly in the early stages, like early development of Triverse before I even started writing the thing. And then in the first like year and a half, Matt was like my sounding board. He was my little like rubber duck that I talked to when I was trying to figure out things, like even down to like the title, the world building, the characters, the kind of storylines that we were talking about, some of the like the magic systems and physics and what have you. Like Matt Plummer was somebody I talked to a lot about all that stuff. So definitely big contribution from Matt there in shaping the overall thing. So then we have a bunch of physicists. So about halfway through writing Triverse, I realized, thanks to Mike Miller actually, who kindly pointed this out, that I had a bit of a not exactly a plot hole, but it was like a sort of physics hole in the way I described some stuff in the very first chapter. So like the prologue, just like there's a tiny detail that didn't quite make sense in terms of how light worked. I won't go into the details, but it was kind of annoying me. I wanted to fix it, but it involved like made up pseudoscience, like magic system stuff. But it was that colliding with real world physics. And I was like, I want to find a solution that feels satisfying and true, even though we're dealing with made up silly stuff. Anyway, so I ended up putting a call out on Substack Notes, and a whole bunch of people just emerged who have, varying scientific backgrounds, some professionals, some, just enthusiasts, some they studied it at university, that kind of thing. So that's John Ward, not that one, Mark Hannum, Simon Jewell, Catriona Nikhil, I hope I'm saying that surname correctly, and Arthur McCabe. So all of them got in touch, and I sent them a ridiculously long description of this problem I had, and they sent me back some sort of semi-real world options of how I could deal with it. And interestingly, they were all sort of in alignment. Like they all kind of went down the same route, despite not talking to each other. So that was interesting because, these people who knew a lot more about the kind of real science behind what I was attempting to grasp at all came to very similar solutions of how I could solve it. And then I worked that into the story down the line. So then we have the other John Ward, who I think I'd like to call John Ward Prime, if that's all right. John Ward's just a permanent fixture on Substack from like way back. Always supports any writer, to be honest, but he's really supported serial fiction writers in particular, and he's always been there. He's really interested in like how Substack works, but also just like online publishing in general. He's always like unpicking how things work, basically, and has been really useful in terms of me figuring out like my route through how to do a serial in a newsletter format, because Triverse was the first time I'd done that. I used to publish on Wattpad back in the day until I realized that was a bit pointless. So yeah, John Ward was there from the start. Also there from the start, but people who aren't around so much these days, Jackie Dana and Jeffrey Golden. So if you're newer to Substack, you might not know them as well, but they set up Fictionistas, which was this fiction writing community. It's still around. It's not quite the same as it used to be. And Jeffrey's headed off to do other things, but this was like before Substack Notes existed, before doing live stuff like this and chat and all that kind of stuff. So Fictionistas was like the only way that you could form a community of writers around Substack, and look them up if you're interested in that kind of thing. But yeah, Jackie and Jeffrey, massively influential and helpful back in those early days, like 2021, 2022. Okay, so next up is like all the readers, all the subscribers, obviously. I started off doing the Substack newsletter with pretty much nobody. By the time I sent out the first chapter of Triverse, I think I had about 140 subscribers. And as of now, I've got over 9,000 subscribers, which is ridiculous. But hopefully a useful kind of example or use case of what you can do by publishing fiction and talking about serial fiction through the newsletter platform. When I started doing this in 2021, didn't feel like there were that many people doing it, whereas now it feels like there's more and more people poking at the serial fiction thing, like on Substack and elsewhere. It feels like we're kind of, I don't know, at the tipping point of something quite exciting happening. On the subject of which, actually, is just a little mention for like the Substack developers themselves. It's not very often you get to think of a tech company in a positive light these days. And, Substack isn't perfect. It's got many issues, but they have also built something that's pretty cool. Like the fact that I can write and publish and send stuff out and accumulate an amazing group of readers over the years, and, extremely generous readers who financially support what I do as well, which has made a huge difference, like in terms of justifying the amount of time I put into the newsletter. Like it's not just like this weird, crazy hobby. that I do, and that takes me away from everything else I should be doing. Like it contributes to the family income now, which is, it's not like quit your job type money, but it helps pay for the groceries in a pretty exciting way. So yeah, over at Substack, like Hamish McKenzie, Chris Best for keeping the whole thing ticking along. Mills Baker, head of design, I think, but he also talks a lot about their design decisions, which over the years, actually, when there's been various controversies embroiling Substack, usually to do with censorship or lack thereof, and just the polarized ends of that debate headbutting each other without really making any progress. Mills talking about their design decisions has given me a lot of confidence that actually behind the scenes, the people there are trying to do something pretty decent. Sam Sudo, I met him over the summer, who's actually written his own fiction book, but is also one of the designers, is responsible for a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. Same with Ben Cohen and Zach. I don't know Zach's surname. He does all the live stuff. So like this live thing we're doing now, he works on that a lot. Ben Cohen, I actually interviewed with John Ward, and we talked a lot about the sort of algorithmic backbone of Substack Notes in particular. And again, a lot of this stuff, the more developers talk about this, the more reassuring it is, and the more that it stops being this weird black box that makes no sense and feels like it's against you, and instead you kind of understand what they're trying to do. Rewinding a long way, I should probably also mention Elle Griffin, because I probably wouldn't be on Substack without her. I interviewed her when I was producing a podcast in a previous job way back. And she mentioned that she was just starting a Substack, and I was like, what is this? So I sort of followed her here, and then this is where I've been ever since. Also, thanks to Unsplash photographers. What would we do without them? I've done as much of my own illustrations as I can. I'm okay at it, but I don't have the time to do it every week. So being able to go to Unsplash and grab some nice human-made photos off there is pretty cool. And that people put their work up there for free is amazing. And finally, thanks to Literature and Latte, which is the software company behind Scrivener. Scrivener being the software that I've used for all of my books, all my serials. So for over 10 years now. It's an extremely fancy word processor, but it works especially well for long form writing of any sort. If you're writing anything that's longer than a short story, anything that's longer than a letter, you don't really want to be doing it in Word or Google Docs, because they get in a panic when you're writing anything long. And as noted, Triverse is the same size as The Lord of the Rings. If I'd written this in Word, it would have just melted and bad things would have happened. Also, because I'm publishing as I go along and I'm serializing it every week, I really need to be able to have like a top view of everything that's going on, because otherwise I would just get lost in my own plot and forget which characters are where and how the threads kind of fit together. And Scrivener lets you do that. It gives you a very good, all sorts of different ways of kind of having an overview of your story, which I think if you're a serial fiction writer in particular, and if you're writing and publishing as you go, is basically essential. You don't need particular tech to be a writer, but what Scrivener does is makes me be a less stressed writer. So it takes care of a lot of stuff so that I can focus on the actual writing and the creative side of it, rather than just going slightly mad trying to remember everything. It's been a long old 4 and a bit years, but it is all out. If you are interested in Tales from the Triverse, I probably should have said this at the start. I'm not very good at this whole marketing thing. It's a kind of crime fiction, science fiction, fantasy thing where it follows a specialist division of the Met Police in London in the 1970s, which has been set up to investigate portal-related criminal activity. And the story is essentially, it's lots of different police procedural investigations as an excuse to clash together 3 very different cultures and see what happens. And as with most good spec fiction, it's just a big old metaphor for our times and me trying to work through the madness of the last 10 years. Anyway, thank you for watching. And thank you to all those people that I just thanked, which I just did. If you would like to read Tales from the Triverse, it's still up completely for free. you can head over to the newsletter at simonkjones.substack.com, and you can find it there. You can jump into random stories or read it from the start. But as noted, there's quite a lot of it. I do have plans to make a proper ebook and paperback, or possibly like a series of books. It would be nice to have it as a polished up experience, but that's going to take a little while. So yeah, thanks for tuning in, and thank you to everyone that's been reading or is maybe now thinking about reading, and especially everyone that's supported me over the years. And yeah, I will now spend the next couple of weeks going slowly mad as I realise that I don't have any more Triverse to write. Okay, I'll speak to you all soon. What I need to do now is find how to end this.